That's okay. No. I've heard of oxygen. I understand, right? So I'm just gonna speak to the okay, we're in. So.
Of quorum, right? Yes, it's the Dianas. Great. Okay. Okay.
I'll call roll for the committee members. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the roll for the land use committee members first, and then I will go to Parks and Environment. When you hear your name, please state that you are present or here. And then for those who are attending via Zoom, board members, committee members, once you hear your name is called, please unmute yourself, state your presence. But please note, those who are attending virtually do not count towards quorum. This is for Land Use Committee. Diana Gonzalez.
Present.
Thank you. Erin Keith. Joan Body. Xiomara Garcia. Thank you. Matthew Florkowitz. Thank you. Julia Melzer Harris. Nicholas Jackson. Daniel Kaminsky. Jeremy Kaplan. Antoinette Martinez. Karen Rolnick. Oops, sorry, that's an error. Damaris Santiago. John Santor. Thank you. Maria Roca. That was for the Land Use Committee, and now I'll be calling roll. Hi, Antoinette, I see you're here. I will mark you present. Thank you. I will now call the roll for the Parks and Environment Committee. Diana Aguilar.
Here.
Thank you. Esteban Chavez.
Here.
Thank you. Silvio Agosto. Carrie Conti. Maria Cruz. Nicole Wong. Jeremy Kaplan. Erin Keith. Paul Mack. Rosie Moda. Sam Sierra. Okay, let me just double check online. Pat, I mark you present, but you do not count towards quorum.
Thank you.
Say hi, Cynthia. I mark you present, but you do not count towards quorum.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dan Kaminsky, I mark you present, but you do not count towards quorum.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. And hi, Julio. I see you are present, but you do not count towards quorum.
Thank you.
Rolla has been called. Hold on. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 5. Let me see. Hold on 1 second. We do not have quorum for either committees. So, I mean, if the committee was to make some motion or something, it would have to be done introduced at the board meeting tomorrow night.
Yep.
At the board meeting, okay?
Yeah, John.
Thank you, John Santor, public member of the committee. Just requesting before the committees adjourn, and I'm understanding that things are changing after the vote tomorrow on the new leadership, but before the committees adjourn, could we have a new business section for either committee, either or both committees, so that any members who are on the call can raise any questions or issues? It's just a request for new business.
I would table that until tomorrow's meeting. which
It-
you're welcome to attend.
Right, but so, I
Have
mean,
a new business portion of that meeting and we'll have a better idea what the committee's leadership is gonna look like going forward.
am, uh, new business is accessible. Who can speak during new business?
Everyone. No, not everyone?
During new business, and Julio can correct me if I'm wrong, that's reserved, old business and new business is reserved for board members.
But you can
John,
speak during public comment.
he can speak during public
You
comment
Could introduce new business.
before committee reports.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So-
I would be willing to endorse.
So I request to be able to speak during this committee hearing as a committee member. I don't know if I'm going to be a committee member again. I think it would be much more, so obviously public comment is just 3 minutes. There's no up and back. You're not engaged in a discussion with anyone.
Correct.
So I, as a committee member, would like to engage with a discussion concerning some matters, specifically land use matters, and I would like to do that in my last chance, possibly my last chance for now during this
Okay,
hearing.
Well, it's my understanding that new business does need to be part of the meeting, so. I'm
So
happy to
we could
grant
do that at the
Yeah,
end?
Great.
Okay, thank you. Should I, Natasha? Thank you.
Okay, so tonight we have Department of Health here and Department of Environmental Conservation. Sean Roberts from Department of Health will be here to give tonight's presentation regarding the cleanup, brownfield cleanup at 4001 Fourth Avenue redevelopment site. Sean, if you can start your presentation.
Actually, I just want to do a brief intro on this
Sure,
for the
sorry.
folks who are in the room who are curious. So the community board received notice that there was pollution found at this site. We reached out to both the city and state departments of environmental conservation, or, whatever their specific name is of that entity. The city one told us that they don't have jurisdiction and that this is being handled entirely by the state DEC, which is why we are hearing from the state DEC remotely from Albany here today. Does anyone have any questions about how this meeting came to fruition that they want to ask before we move forward with the presentation? Yeah, John? The process was an email. It was just, we emailed the city department, we emailed the state department, the city said we don't have jurisdiction, the state is handling it. And they
And-
didn't see what they would be able to contribute to this meeting.
And what is the overall issue or concern that led to this?
For findings of contamination at the site, and we want to make sure that the brownfield is adequately cleaned before new construction takes place.
And is this presentation part of a standard process that goes through on all such
Yes.
sites? Is it a process that's specific to schools or any?
Process, my understanding is, and obviously the people presenting will have a better answer than I have, but my understanding is anytime there is pollution being found at a development site, this is the process. The state offers a very generous grant program for brownfield cleanup.
So we're getting the official
This is,
findings.
yes. We're
Okay.
not findings, because it's not done yet. The cleanup isn't complete. We're going to hear about what the law requires, what's going to be cleaned, how it's going to be cleaned, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record and for folks that are calling in, can we clarify what's looking to be developed on the site?
I'll leave that to the presentation. Okay.
Hi, Sean, you were asked to unmute yourself so you can start your presentation now.
Okay, you guys can hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. All right, let me start the presentation. All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for Brooklyn Community Board 7 for arranging this. My name is Sean Roberts, and I am the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Project Manager for the site. And so let's get started. So the outline for today, I'm going to go over the involved parties for the site, the community participation program, the brownfield cleanup program overview, so steps in our brownfield cleanup program and just kind of outlining everything, the ongoing interim remedial measures or IRMs, future remedial action, and then we'll go over current status, and then just as a whole, the DEC process and next steps. So we're going to start with the BCP involved parties. So on the environmental regulation side, we have the DEC. The public health regulation side, we have DOH. For the site itself, the applicant requester is 4Ave Property LLC, and then the engineering consultant is Haley and Aldrich. So the community participation plan, it's the actual document, and then that kind of outlines our approach and procedures for making things known to the public. So fact sheets are issued at major milestones of the program, and then certain steps in that process are associated with public comment periods, and they're open to various points to allow for community input. So for this particular site, the document repositories are Brooklyn Community Board 7 and the Brooklyn Public Library, the Sunset Park branch. And then this site right here is the DEC info locator link, and this has all of the site-related documents that are publicly available. And if you would like to get the fact sheets, you can actually go to this link and then sign up for that. And then whenever they come out, you'll get a notification. And then, or you can search on DEC's website for DEC delivers. So the actual site that we're talking about here, 4001 4th Avenue redevelopment site, that's this pink area here. And it was a former gas station. And then all these various colors kind of correspond to the use, but we have some residential nearby. We have the car wash, some commercial. We have the school across the street, and then mixed residential commercial. But just to give you an idea of the neighborhood here. So the BCP process with the citizen participation requirements. So it starts out with the application, and the public comment period was from August 21st, 2024 to September 20th, 2024. We're obviously completed that part. So the next step is executing the actual agreement, the legal agreement between the applicant and the state. And that was completed November 1st, 2024. So a remedial investigation work plan, essentially the document that outlines all of the procedures that are going to take place during the investigation to try to figure out, the extent of contamination, and nature and extent is kind of how we generalize that. So that was submitted with the BCP application. So because it was submitted with the application, it was also accessible during that public comment period for the application from August 21st to September 20th. And the RI work plan, the remedial investigation work plan, was then approved later, March 5th of 2025. And in the meantime, which is the work that's ongoing as of right now, the interim remedial measures work plan was approved November 7th of 2025. And then just as the overview here for the remedial investigation field work, where we collected all the necessary data, we defined the nature and extent of the problem. That was completed from April 14th, 2025 to January 6th, 2026. And then just a continuation here. So where we are right now is the fact sheet that was issued on May 20th of this year. It summarizes the results of the investigation and announced the 45-day public comment period. So essentially the RIR, or the remedial investigation report, that has all the results from the investigation, and this RAP, the remedial action work plan, where now that we know the extent of contamination, this is the document that actually discusses what actions are going to be taken to address the contamination. And that's what's out for public comment period, for this public comment period. And then the next step after the public comment period, we take in any comments that we receive from the public, and then we incorporate them in addition to our review of the documents. And so that next step, we approve the RAP, and the department, issue a decision document. And this outlines the specific remedial elements to be implemented at the site to address contamination in the soil, groundwater, and soil vapor. And then so this is the next major step. And then after that, we implement the remedy. And then that'll also be associated with a fact sheet of, okay, now we're breaking ground. We're going to begin. And then later on, we will also issue a fact sheet as we monitor the remedy, being whether we completed the remediation or if we completed most of the remediation, but there's still maybe things lingering behind, and that'll be dealt with through a site management plan or an environmental easement. And we'll also issue a fact sheet for that. So cleanup activities completed and ongoing under the IRM, the interim remedial measures. So the purpose for the IRM, just what is an IRM? So an IRM is an activity that can be undertaken at any point during the remedial investigation when a source of contamination or exposure pathway can be effectively addressed before issuance of the decision document. Based on the following conditions identified at this site, DEC approved a plan to remove underground storage tanks, USTs, and contaminated soil. So data collected during the RI and previous investigations showed high levels of gasoline contamination in the soil, groundwater, and soil vapor. And the immediate concern was to remove all these tanks and source area soils that could be further contributing to the contamination and have the potential to migrate further and impact a larger area. So we didn't want, if there was a tank somewhere on the site that just kept leaking, we wanted to get rid of that ASAP. So the picture on the left here is the scope of the original IRM. So this is the area, this little red hatched area. So we knew that there were 4 suspected USTs or underground storage tanks, and then the excavation was going to be to 12 feet below the ground surface. And so on this figure over here, these are the 4 tanks that, we knew were there. And over the course of this IRM, all these are also USTs that we found. So there were 28 underground storage tanks found. Again, initially through the investigation, we didn't know. All we knew is that there were these 4. And over the course of the excavation, we realized that there are actually 28 total tanks, which have all since been removed. So here's some pictures, but just to go over the underground storage tank removal and the soil excavation. So during all site work, community air monitoring plan, or CAMP, stations are deployed at the upwind and downwind perimeters of the site. These 2 camp stations are realigned with the wind direction to provide data upwind and downwind of any ongoing work. And there's also a dedicated camp station located between the excavation work and the adjacent occupied properties. So those residences kind of on the southern side of the site. And so camp stations collect and record dust data, particulates, and they also collect vapors data. So specifically volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. So in addition to camp stations, the following precautionary measures are implemented as well. So dust suppression, typically water. So as excavation occurs, typically you just spray water on the excavation with a hose or something just to keep the dust down. And then odor suppression is used in the form of foam. So that's this white foam in the pictures here. And these 4 pictures, so these are all at this site. This is the area up here in the top right, and they're installing some SOE work, or supportive excavation, so then they can get down far enough. And then this bottom right here is where they sprayed the odor suppression. You can see this area over here. Bottom left here, you can see some of the tanks that were removed with the odor suppressant. And then this top left just also shows that area with the tanks. So future remedial action. So the draft remedial action work plan is currently in public comment period. So from May 20th is when it was noticed till July 6th of this year. And the RAP proposes the following actions to target the 3 primary environmental media, being the soil, groundwater, and soil vapor. So the RAP for the soil component details excavation and installation of a cover system. For the groundwater, chemical injections, that's what we're going to use to deal with the groundwater problem. And then for soil vapor, there's 2 elements here, installation of a sub-slab depressurization system, or an SSDS, and soil vapor extraction, SVE. This is anticipated to begin in mid-July of this year after DEC addresses any public comments, approves the RAP, and issues the decision document. So going through the remedial elements for the site. So first I'll start with soil and groundwater. So on this figure to the left here, this is the soil component, which is excavation. The soil cover will be dealt with during construction, but as far as dealing with the problem in the soil, we're just going to excavate it out. So this area right here, this purplish bluish area, that's going to be excavated down to 25 feet below the ground surface. And then the outer edge here, the red or pinkish color, that'll be excavated down to 2 feet below the ground surface. And then moving to the right side here for the groundwater component, what's going to be used is in situ chemical oxidation or ISCO injections. Specifically, what's being used here is an alkaline activated sodium persulfate. And this was the specific chemical selected that breaks down the contaminants found in groundwater. And so essentially, each of these little black dots here are the injection points. And then the circles outside of it are the radius of influence, or how far those injection points will end up influencing. This will be tested through pilot tests and things on the site to make sure that whatever injection points are selected, it'll actually, cover the entirety of the site area and deal with all the groundwater here. But this is just the initial plan until they get out there and do some pilot tests and figure out the true design. And then for soil vapor, broke it up here into the subslab depressurization system, or the SSDS, and then I'll get to the SVE in a moment. But for the SSDS, essentially it's comprised of an open space beneath the foundation. And then there's piping within that open space connected to a blower, which leads to an outlet around roof level located away from any breathing zone. So what this does, the purpose of it is it collects the contaminated soil vapor from beneath the foundation slab, and it prevents that vapor from entering the building. So, if you're familiar with a radon fan, that's essentially what this is. It kind of takes it and throws it somewhere else. But note that a subslab depressurization system does not directly remediate the sources of contamination. So you're not treating the vapors. It's just preventing it from entering the building. So it mitigates the potential for vapor intrusion, which is vapors from the subsurface entering a building through its foundation. And then, so this figure, it's kind of hard to see here, but this is the proposed building. And I know it was brought up earlier, but the proposed development is a school. And so this is going to be the cellar. And that's where this space below the foundation is going to be located. And then all these little red dotted lines that are kind of hard to see, that's the piping network for the design. And then these little black circles are the monitoring points to make sure that before we're comfortable with the system working as intended, we test to see if we have any influence or vacuum influence. So the purpose of this is to draw vapors out, so we need to make sure that it's actually doing that. So moving on to the SVE system, this is a little more robust, but so essentially it's comprised of several extraction wells connected by piping to a blower, similar to the SSDS. The piping leads to a series of carbon treatment vessels and work like an air filter. So the contaminated air is pumped into these tanks and any contamination is trapped within the carbon. Those carbon vessels are then monitored, and once they show signs of becoming depleted or saturated with contaminated material, they are replaced accordingly. The purpose of an SVE, so the required vacuum is much higher than a subslab depressurization system and is designed to be powerful enough to pull contamination out of solid and liquid phases into a gas. So an SVE system directly remediates contamination by vacuuming it out from the subsurface. And like I kind of mentioned for the groundwater portion of the remedy, a pilot test will be performed prior to installation to verify design parameters such as the radius of influence, or ROI, of the extraction wells at this specific site. So the radius of influence of these wells is influenced by several variables, including how tight the soils are or how much pore space the soil contains. So for the initial design, similar to the groundwater injection, these little target circles are the injection point, or they're the extraction well points. And then the dotted circles around these points is the estimated radius of influence as of now. And then once we do the pilot test, we'll actually confirm what the true radius of influence is for this site and then design accordingly to make sure that we're able to pull all the contamination out. So that's the soil vapor portion of the remedy. So the current status of the site, the ongoing interim remedial measure is nearing completion, and all 28 underground storage tanks identified during the excavation have been removed from the site. And IRM activities are on track to be completed in approximately 6 weeks. So the remedial investigation report, the RIR, summarizing the results of the investigation, and the RAP detailing the proposed remedy are out for public comment until July 6th, as I mentioned. And this site is on track to clean up contamination and receive a certificate of completion by December 31st of this year. So the DEC process and next steps. The remedy will include continued operation of remedial systems and the implementation of institutional controls and engineering controls, or ICs and ECs. So the plan is to continue post-treatment groundwater monitoring under the site management plan, continue monitoring of the SVE system, or the soil vapor extraction system, under the SMP, or site management plan, recording of an environmental easement to limit the site use and to ensure compliance with the site management plan, approve the final engineering report, which essentially just has all the finalized findings from everything. So the investigation, we figured out where the contamination was, how bad is it. The remedial action work plan goes through the process of determining what we're going to do about the contamination that was found. And then the final engineering report essentially shows that it worked. Like the final sampling to confirm that the contamination is no longer there. That's all going to be certified in the final engineering report. And then after that, the issuance of the certificate of completion is anticipated for December of this year. And that certifies that it was complete. So you can access the RIR, RAP, and other project documents online through the DEC info locator link, which is provided here. And the beginning part of this URL, this is the site code. So 4001 4th Avenue redevelopment site. The code is C224412. But you can put in any DEC site code at the end of this URL and you'll find that site's documents. Just a little tidbit. And that's all we have for the presentation. So, of
Thank you.
course.
Before we move into Q&A, Natasha, can we recall the roll for land use? The second roll call?
Okay, so I'm going to be calling the committee members of land use who did not respond previously. Joan Body, Nicholas Jackson, Erin Keith. Thank you. Damaris Santiago, and Maria Roca, and Julia Milzer Harris. Oh, sorry. And Jeremy Kaplan. Thank you.
We have quorum?
There is quorum for the land use committee.
Great, thank you.
Hi, sorry, one question for me. So you mentioned that the anticipated development is gonna be a school, so until they issue the certificate of completion, the school, like, they can't move on with building the school, right?
Correct. Yeah. They can't actually occupy the school until we're comfortable that the remedy's been completed.
Okay, got it. And, what if wait, you guys can go. Let me like think.
Actually, I want to follow up on that question. You said the school can't be occupied until this is completed. Is there an existing building on the site?
Not as of now, no.
So what you're saying is they can't construct until this is completed, correct?
Well, parts of the remedy are going to be ongoing while, construction is happening. So, for example, when they excavate the soil, obviously they need to do that before the building's there. But
Yeah.
as far as the injections for the groundwater component and then the operation of the SSDS and the SVE, that can be ongoing as the building is still there.
You ask.
Will we have access to the site management plan so that we can kind of track the sequencing of when you're doing those injections and the other elements during the construction process?
So, I may ask you to chip in there, David. I know that there's going to be injections that are prior to the site management plan. The goal is essentially to complete everything prior to that phase. But if in our sampling we find that there's still contamination, then we'll keep doing injections as necessary. If you just want to fill in anything besides that.
No, that's correct. So the site management plan phase begins with the acceptance of the FER, which is the completion of that remedial action phase. And so, as Sean indicated, there may be some of the remedy that takes place prior to the start of site management, but then there'll be continued groundwater monitoring as well as the subslab depressurization system. So the structure, the new building or development would have to be constructed first, and then that vapor barrier liner that's under the building, the fan system, the exhaust system, all of that would have to be tested. And that would again be prior to occupancy, but the construction would have had to have begun because the construction is kind of part and parcel with that soil vapor system or protection system for the structure. The groundwater monitoring will continue into site management. And as Sean had alluded, it may require additional chemical injections if there is still significant contamination in the groundwater.
I have a follow-up question. You mentioned that the remediation is expected to be completed by December 2026 with a report, a fact sheet. Is there going to be any monitoring or assessment of the site after December 2026? Is there any kind of a follow-up or inspection?
Yes. So because there's engineering controls on this site, the soil vapor extraction system, the monitoring wells for the groundwater injections, all those are going to be sampled and monitored well past the certificate of completion. Like just because it's identified as remediation complete does not mean that that's where the monitoring ends. It continues long past that until there's either the contamination is non-existent or there's a couple other decision points, but it goes well beyond.
When would the certificate of occupancy be given?
So that's not actually the Department of Environmental Conservation's purview. We don't have that authority, but I do believe there's cooperation with the city. And if the city requests our recommendations, then we can offer what was completed in that final engineering report, the remaining contamination in place, the site management plan, a lot of the documents that we're talking about here. I just wanted to add one part to Sean's comment about the continued monitoring and oversight of the site. So environmental conservation law at the state level requires an annual certification by the owner that the remedy that's been installed is still in place and remains protective of the public and public health. So that would be an annual requirement that the owner would have to certify to the department, DEC, I mean. to just make sure that all of those pieces of the remedy are still in place and protective as well.
Are there any additional certifications or inspections that you're doing because this is a school for kids? I'm not sure if there's like a difference between like, are there any special inspections that you do because this will be a school?
I think that this is Jane O'Connell. I'm the regional remediation engineer for DEC's Region 2 office. So the question about a school is considered under our regulations and the Department of Health's guidance, it is considered a similar to a residential setting, right? The exposure scenarios are similar to a residential setting. So it's a very conservative set of cleanup goals we have for a school or a residence.
And then one thing I'd like to add is that for the remedial action work plan, one thing that was requested by DEC, because it is going to be a school, is that we ask for robust covers on all the monitoring wells that are going to be in the school and other extra protective elements for the remedial action. So it is definitely being considered.
All right. It's all right with you guys. I have a few questions. So, have you been in contact at all with any of the neighbors of the site, to kind of assess how cleanup might affect them?
So I don't know if we've had any direct contact with them, Sean, but part of the remedial plan and part of the IRM includes this community air monitoring. We are aware that there were odor concerns at the site. We've worked with Haley and Aldrich over the last week to try to address those as aggressively as we can.
Is there a point of contact for people in the immediate vicinity to be able to reach out if there is an issue? And are they made aware of who that person is and what their information is?
Yeah, so anybody that has concerns regarding the site, you can contact either me, the DEC PM for the site, project manager, or you can also contact Christopher Budd, the Department of Health project manager. And there should be, if it isn't already, there should be our contact information at the site itself. If that's not the case, then we can.
So it's what, posted on a sign or something?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if it is, but if it's not, we can definitely add that information.
Yeah, let's work on that, and we want to be certain.
Is
Sure.
that not posted in their construction flyer, like all of the inspections and approvals they post on the construction site?
They're not required to post. The city Department of Buildings will not allow anything to be posted except the DOB permits. So what we've done typically is we've asked for to have a small sign. We can sometimes get them to do it, but sometimes they do it and the DOB comes along and gives them a ticket.
If you're
So
having
we'll do
any
what we
trouble with
can.
that, I think we'd be happy to weigh in with the DOB.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That seems like an easy fix. Okay, and I wanted to know, so how is it determined how deep to excavate?
Sure. So through the remedial investigation, we take soil samples at every couple feet down to the water table. So at this site, the water table goes down to it's roughly at 30 feet below the surface. And so we take soil samples all the way down to there and a little into the groundwater table. And based on what we found during the investigation, that's what kind of gives us the information that we need to determine how far we actually need to excavate.
And so, forgive my ignorance. So once you hit the groundwater table, you find water, right? There
Yes.
is at some point earth below it, right?
Yeah, and we still sample the soil into the groundwater table.
Okay,
but
but you can't go below the groundwater table.
you can. It's just, yeah, it's more difficult. But yes, we do, and we did for this site. If you wanted to chip in there, David.
Yeah, the sampling for the remedial investigation did determine the vertical horizontal delineation of the contamination. I'm sorry, is that the question, whether we know how deep the contamination goes?
Basically, yes.
Yeah, okay. So yes, we did. We continue to sample until we get clean soil,
Okay,
whether that's above or below the water table.
okay. And you found that it was at 25 feet, which is above the water table.
I believe
So-
that's the,
Yeah, Jane,
well,
I wanted
this,
to add in
yep.
here, as Jane had mentioned, so what we do with the laboratory results of all of those soil intervals and the groundwater intervals is we compare them to drinking water standards. And as Jane had said, we compared this to a conservative residential set of cleanup objectives. And then based on anything that exceeds that residential, restricted residential cleanup objective number for soil, we have to remove that as part of our remedial action work plan. And so that's what determines how deep we go. And in this instance, groundwater was a concern. And so we had identified that approximately 25 feet below ground surface is the depth we would need the contractor and consultant to excavate down to remove the source of the groundwater contamination.
Okay, so then this kind of ties into my next question of, so you remediate down to 25 feet, but you still have vapors. Where are the vapors coming from?
So I guess one element to that. So we're not, just because we're excavating 25 feet doesn't mean that we're only remediating to 25 feet. And that's where we have the groundwater injections that will actually deal with contamination below that level in the groundwater. And that's why we also are implementing the soil vapor extraction, because then any leftover soil contamination below that depth will also be pulled into a gaseous phase, and then it'll be removed. So I just want to make that clear, that just because we're excavating to 25 feet doesn't mean that the remediation stops there.
Right, but then why not just dig deeper instead of going all this trouble to fight vapors?
Sure. But I guess the problem with that is, like David mentioned with the groundwater table, when you start excavating into the groundwater table, it becomes very difficult to dewater as you're going down, and also the feasibility for, I'm gonna hyperbolize a little bit, but what if you had, a 10 by 10 area and you're going down 100 feet? It'd be very tough to kind of figure out how to keep it from collapsing in on itself.
Right.
And so there's structural hurdles.
Okay, so then I guess my next question is so let's say a hypothetical situation, you find that there's a site that's deeply contaminated and you would have massive quantities of vapors coming up out of it because you wouldn't be able to excavate deep enough. At what point do you say we can't have a school here, we can't have a residence here, we give up on this property and we walk away? Where is that line?
I don't know that we have that line. We're engineers. We would figure out a way to put an engineering control on the structure. We do that all the time, all over the state. We have many sites where we have a vapor problem that we cannot either. Vapor is not like groundwater. It doesn't travel in a neat line. It travels the path of least resistance. So we find sites where we have a vapor problem that is not even coming from an on-site source. And we cannot figure out where the vapor is coming from. We could still put an engineering control on any building and keep the vapor out of the building and protect the building.
Okay, now one more question for you, and you may not know the answer to this. If the New York City public school system were constructing a school on this site, and if it weren't a charter school, do you know if they would find this remediation plan adequate to put a school on this site?
The School Construction Authority has gone through the brownfield cleanup program on several sites. So we have done remediation on sites that public schools are built on. We would use the same standards, criteria, and guidance for School Construction Authority that we would for a private school.
And this meets those requirements?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And then, so my final question, barring any follow-ups later, is you have a public comment period open. We've asked you to come before us, and we really appreciate you taking the time to answer all of our questions. Are you asking anything of us at this juncture in terms of feedback?
Well, I will
Mm.
say from my perspective, we're always looking for community feedback, right? I work in New York City. Some of my colleagues work up in Albany, but we don't live in the neighborhood. So the boots on the ground people are the ones who can help us get the word out about that this is going on, that we are overseeing this, that if people have concerns, they can reach out to us. So we would just ask if folks have reached out to you, if they're curious about this site, let them know that Sean and Christopher are available to answer questions. The more educated the public is, the better it goes for everybody, because then everybody understands that we're all pulling in the same direction.
What would be the what would be the easiest way to facilitate that kind of conversation? Via email? Would these be comments that we would be posting on the website? How would
Jane,
that?
sorry, Shai. I would say above all for anyone, and this is generally to, I guess, register with our listserv, our email service where these fact sheets are sent out to. And I think you can select, Jane, is this correct, on a county basis? I don't think it's a
It is,
subset of county.
yeah.
Okay, so it
Unfortunately,
has to be
it's by county.
yeah, so if you're in Brooklyn, it might be quite a number of fact sheets that you would get a notice on by email, but that would be a fantastic. That's always my first response is, get on our list so that you're getting our fact sheets. That's the easiest way for this specific site. Yeah, and sorry, those fact sheets also have Sean and Christopher's contact information as well for DEC and DOH.
So actually, one thought I had was, Sean, if you could add one more slide onto the end of this that just has your contact information and Chris's, your email address, your phone numbers on there.
Sure.
And then send that back to the community board, and they can, let folks know this is how you can ask questions. If you have health related questions, you contact Chris. If you have questions about the Brentfield cleanup program in general, you can reach out to Sean. But we're definitely we did the best we do is probably not good enough in terms of reaching out to people. We do this through our listserv, we do mailings, but a lot of people don't read snail mail. And we can't send something directly to somebody's email box unless they sign up for the listserv. So I think it would be really helpful if you guys have people who are asking questions to just give them our contact information.
Great, thank you. Do you guys have any questions, or do you want to go to full commit?
I have some questions. My first question is about the sub-slab depressurization system. Do those ever have issues long term? Have you guys found that they've had issues then you've installed them in other sites?
I could speak to that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'm Christopher Budd. I'm the DOH project manager for this site. So when the SSDS gets installed, it goes through a series of tests to make sure that it is has a negative vacuum, so it's providing suction to the vapor beneath the slab, and we can tell that it's rerouting it, up off to the roof line, essentially up the building. So we test it that way, and then we also take indoor air samples to confirm that the indoor air is within our guideline levels for the contaminants. And we do that also on a yearly basis, on an annual basis going forward as part of the site management plan. So that is being checked, throughout the perpetuity of the system being operational and running.
I can also add that typically these systems will have what's called a remote telemetry on them, the sub-slab depressurization system. So there'll be an alarm in the building. If there's a superintendent's office or something like that, there'll be an alarm in the building. So if the one of the fans goes down, the alarm trips. The consultants and the engineers are notified. Everybody goes out and checks out what's going on. So there are between that and the annual certification of the system, the annual indoor air sampling, there are multiple checks and balances on this systems.
Great. For the annual check of the system, who is the enforcement agency if that fails? And then what happens after it fails? if it fails that
So,
certification?
so right now, that would be Sean as the project manager up in Albany that would take that annual certification. We send out reminder notices to the owners, and they have a set number of days to submit that professional engineer stamped and certified report. So that would go into Sean for his review. And then again, making sure that all of the remedial elements are still in place and protective as designed.
And then what happens if it does fail that certification? What are the next steps?
Oh, sorry. We have a corrective measures procedure where if we do identify deficiency, there's a cure period, and then that owner would have to employ consultants and engineers to remedy the situation.
Okay.
Just two questions. So, with the schools that have been built on cleanup brownfields, have you heard of anyone getting sick? And if someone does get sick, who's in charge to help those kids and fix the issue?
I haven't heard of any situation like that, but I don't know if I'm the best person to speak about this.
Okay,
guess.
and will the school be required to let parents know? Because like if I was a parent, I would want to know where I'm sending my kid. Like, this is a polluted place. Like, I wouldn't want to send my kid to the school.
This is Scarlett from New York State Department of Health. To speak to your first question, the point is to address the exposure pathway with a lot of checks and balances, removing the contamination, and then having additionally as a belt and suspenders that subslab depressurization system put on any building, and then verifying it's effective and continuing to maintain it and verify it's effective. So there wouldn't be an exposure. That's something that, we want to make very clear. We're involved in every step of the way with DEC, in the investigation, in the remediation, in the verification that the site actually is effectively cleaned up, and that all exposure pathways are addressed to any contamination that was on the site, or even if it wasn't from the site itself, that's migrating onto the site and continues to be managed so that people are not going to have to be concerned about being exposed to any contamination. We take it very, very seriously, and then continue to check on it regularly through the periodic certifications, but we also get periodic review reports that tell us everything that's been going on, and shows that the systems continue to be effective. And again, there's that alarm system Jane was talking about too, that if for some reason a fan burns out or something, it can be addressed immediately. I've been doing this about 25 years, and I've not heard of anyone getting sick on a site like that. So we try to make sure that everything is as protective as possible, just so that we don't have to run into issues like that, because nobody wants to send their kids to a school that has impacts, and we take it very seriously to make sure that that's not a concern.
I have a follow-up question to that. What are the symptoms of overexposure to VOCs?
Every VOC or volatile organic compound has, different things that it can do, as far as with exposure. There's both, I don't want to get too into the weeds here in scientific, but there's acute or like short-term exposures, and then there's chronic long-term exposures. And the health department works with our Bureau of Toxic Substance Assessment to evaluate each individual contaminant that could be present at each site, and looks at those and potential health effects that could be associated with them, in order to develop the regulatory guidelines and concentrations that we use as comparison values for soil, groundwater, soil vapor, for soil vapor intrusion, as well as the breathable air. As far as that, I mean, we're looking at mainly gasoline type range contaminants at the site. it's not something that, I mean, the main thing is address the exposure so no one's exposed to anything. And then you don't really have to be concerned with health effects. But gas stations that you pump your gas at, it's mainly if you have elevated concentrations that you're regularly exposed to, there could be headache, or if the odor is strong, you could feel some nausea. But again, the main goal here is not to have an exposure and not to have a health effect associated with it. I mean, it's one of the reasons that we have very very restrictive camps or community or monitoring plans on the sites as we clean it up, because we don't want the contamination to remain there, but we also don't want it to be migrating off the site and persisting and potentially causing those sorts of issues.
Will the list of those possible symptoms be included in the fact sheet or final report?
So we do have fact sheets on specific analytes and everything. We could probably make sure that that's part of on DEC info locator where we're directing people to for that. I'm not sure if we can have them put those in those reports. They are typically appended to any sampling reports that have the data in there as well. I think they're in there.
Yeah,
I think they're in there now already.
Yeah, I believe that information should also be in the health and safety plan for
Yeah.
exposures to the site-specific chemicals.
And I presume you'll communicate with the school nurse as well? Or not?
I mean, the school nurse could certainly reach out to us if they have any concerns for
Okay.
sure. And that information, you know, we've been in contact with, you know, Department of Education whenever we're working on schools and everything too. So that information is certainly available. And they do take an active role in making sure that they're aware of everything that's going on. But we don't typically directly contact the nurse of various schools, but you know, they certainly could reach out to us too, but Department of Education, we are in contact with, so.
I had a couple follow-up questions. The 25 injections on the site, has that already happened?
No.
And how will that affect the surrounding properties? And will they get notification that this water injection or chemical injection will be happening?
So I guess that speaks to the dose that's actually being injected here, and based on the concentrations and based on the investigation, we have a rough idea as far as how much injection we need. So it's not like we're just dumping, injection into the ground and hoping that it's gonna deal with the problem and some of it could keep carrying on. It's a dose specific. We're we're using just enough to mitigate the problem and remediate what's actually there.
And
But
you said that you would continue to do those injections or doses as needed through the monitoring.
correct. So
correct?
we'll continue. So we'll monitor. So we'll do an injection. Then we'll check the levels again. Then if okay, it's not quite where we want it, we'll do some more. But we don't want to just dump everything in and then hope. We just kind of do little by little and make sure we whittle it down and get it to where we need it to be.
And just to piggyback a little on that, you probably know, but the area is served by public water. So it's not something that people are in contact with. The water is piped in from, you know, another source that's tested regularly to make sure it meets all drinking water standards. So this groundwater is, you know, I think they were saying around 30 feet or so below the ground surface. So you may already know that, but in case that was a question you were thinking in the background as he was talking.
Yeah, so I guess if we were in, upstate New York or something where people do have drinking water wells outside of their house, then yes, that would be a situation where we'd definitely be in contact with anybody that could be exposed to the injections or what have you. So,
Okay, thank you. the 5 stacks that are going to be integrated into the building, that is, it's running to the roof and then leading to the outside air. Do the neighbors need to be aware of that, or is there, what are the like fire hazards or any kind of issues around having 5 stacks of
Sean, I just
exhausting
wanted to
air?
just add one point very quickly about the sub-slab depressurization system. Sean's note had identified this is not like a mitigation technology for the contamination. It's really to just make sure that there's no positive pressure pushing vapor up through the concrete slab into the basement or the breathing space. So it's not a robust extraction system. It's really meant, and it's usually during heating season where you're going to have warmer air, leaking out of a building and kind of pulling a draft or negative pressure from the basement up. Is that we're trying to mitigate that vacuum, that pull, so that we only use small fan systems that are just robust enough to pull a negative pressure and not really much more. We're not trying to extract vapor. And so that's what's going to be the vent system to the roof line. We will, Chris, if you want to, maybe your DOH could talk about some of that outlet sampling.
Well, I guess so. So we have guidance. DOH has guidance for the SSDS. I guess construction, how far away the exhaust stack has to be from like open windows and above the roof line, and those have all been formally approved in our guidance to be conservative to make sure that nobody around the area is going to get is going to breathe in anything that's being exhausted from the SSDS. And as far as could you just elaborate on the sampling, David? Your question there.
Would there be sampling from the exhaust points, kind of where we do the manometers, where we might make sure that there's a negative pressure being pulled? Would sampling be part of that as well? Like pulling a Suma can, I mean.
So this is Scarlett. Just to jump in, Chris, typically to determine the effectiveness of the system, we have 2-part efficacy sampling, right? And that's going to be to verify, as David was saying, the extent of the slab is depressurized. And additionally, that when the building envelope is complete and air handling systems are in place, indoor air is sampled to see if concentrations are within background. As far as the stack itself, that the pipe that's going to go up and is going to exhaust above the roof line, those concentrations are typically modeled to identify if there is a problem initially, first off. And they do tend to dissipate quickly, and it's not an extraction system. If there is an indication that there could be elevated concentrations there, then filtration is usually provided with carbon treatment or some such thing, but it's not typically needed. The point does, as Chris had mentioned, have to be a certain distance away from any receptors, and it does dissipate extremely quickly any low levels that might be in it in the first place.
So you've planned for 5 stacks. What happens if there is more vapor than what is expected? You went in with the expectation of 4 tanks and found 28. So just putting that out there.
I'm not
Well,
sure. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, I guess because if we're still talking about the SSDS system or the subslab depressurization system,
Correct.
we just need to remember that the soil vapor extraction system, the more robust system, is going to be extracting most of those contaminated vapors before they even hit the SSDS system. So the SSDS is basically just right under the building slab. So you have your building SSDS. The SVE system is down here actually pulling all this contamination out. So what the SSDS is doing is just kind of pulling a little bit of air just to make sure that it's not entering the building. But the SVE is going to be dealing with most of the contaminated air. And then that is also going to be running through the carbon treatment. So it's not like that's just being, discharged somewhere where somebody could breathe it in. That's not how that would happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sean, and if I could add, the SSDS design is based on the slab, which is going to be known. It's really not dependent on contaminant or concentrations or anything. It's really just for that building slab and the design.
Thank you very much. I might ask for a section of that later. Go on. Anyone else?
I think let's open it up to community board members who are online. Natasha?
Yep. Jerry, you have your hand raised. Please unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the information. My hands is raised so long, I kind of forgot my questions. But I do remember. So we keep talking about the school, the school, the school. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the neighbors, right? We talk about the vapors, travel, lease. It sounds like one of my projects I did in ninth grade, right? Radon testing, right? So have we? My question is, have we talked to the residents of 414 40th Street, 418 40th Street, 413 41st Avenue, 415 41st Avenue, because if you're looking at the tank, where the tank is located, is very close to the backyard. That means doesn't matter how deep, how well you test this area, soil, right? I'm an engineer too, so I understand where you guys are coming from. Right. Soils, they will leak into the next yard. Who care about the school, right? Because there might be kids living there too, because there's so many people concerned about school. I'm concerned about the residency, right? So are we reaching out to them? Are we doing testing over there? Did we drill deep, right? Diagonally, right, to test the soil, to make sure their soil is clean? I also worked in petroleum for many years.
Sure. So I will say that we do have a dedicated camp station right on that boundary. So from the site to those residences right there, I believe that's what you're talking about, the southern adjacent residences. And so we do have a dedicated camp station that picks up VOCs and dust. And to my knowledge, I don't believe we've had issues on that edge. But
So a little bit background, this neighborhood, right? Neighborhood is kind of funny. Everyone live here. When we talk about melting pot, it might be the melting pot of Brooklyn, and that just in that block alone, right? Whatever you sent out, right? They may not understand. They might not know. They might be working, right? And they don't even know about it. But again, I want to see how are you guys actually reaching out to those neighbors, letting them know that gas station's gone. That gas station been here for a long time. There might be some leakage into the ground, which usually they are, right? We want to make sure that when we build the school, when we build the new foundation, again, if it can't go through the foundation, it will come in this way and go into your house. Make sure that they are protected.
So this is Scarlett again. Part of the requirements of the remedy in order for us to sign off on it, in addition to addressing any contamination that's been identified in the remedial investigation, is to prevent migration off-site. That's also a requirement. That's part of what the soil vapor extraction is going to do as well. That's intended to address contaminants in the subsurface and above the groundwater table, as well as prevent the offsite migration. So you see just those general radius of influence circles that were on the map. That's estimated. We're gonna have better idea of everything when we kind of get them in the ground and see what's going on. But that also would be preventing that migration that you're talking about to those offsite properties, because we absolutely understand that there's always a potential that contamination could migrate, and we're cognizant we don't want to have a remedy occur that would cause more of a problem. Our goal is to clean everything up. So even if we weren't able to get a hold of the adjacent residences or other people there, it's still something that we take very seriously to make sure that it's not going to go off site and affect them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll leave my question to other board members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat, can you unmute yourself? Pat Ruiz.
Hi, how are you? I have two questions for you. My first question is regarding the charter school representatives. Are you working with them to get the word out to assist with everything that you are asking us to do? What is their part in reaching out to the community, their neighbors that they're building on? And my second question is, can you 100% guarantee that you can get rid of all of those vapors so there is not a danger? I mean, obviously, I mean, and I could be wrong. It seems that this school, no matter what, wants to build on that property, which personally to me sounds ridiculous. Is unsafe for anybody, for children. Anyway, so those are my questions. Thank you.
I guess start by saying, we would not allow for anybody to occupy the building, to build the building until we are confident that the remedy is going in a good direction. We're actually achieving what we need to do to remove it all. So yes, we are confident that once we certify that the remedy is complete, that it is safe.
So what's the timeline on you guaranteeing? I mean, because obviously you just said you won't let them build unless you are confident. So my question is, they have a timeline, obviously, because they need to be out of their present location, is my understanding. So help me out here.
Sure. I guess I'll further refine what I said in that, we're not going to allow the building until the soil is excavated to what, we did the investigation. We know where the primary soil contamination is. So once we have confirmation that that's done correctly, then they can start building. And then before we can even occupy the building, before we're going to certify that everything's done, we're going to do the injections, and we're not going to say that the injections are complete until we've done several rounds of sampling. Then we know for a fact that what we're sampling, it's no longer in the groundwater. And then as far as the SVE for the soil vapor problem, we don't stop running that system until, like, because I mentioned earlier that the SVE is going to take all that contaminated air and it's going to put it through those carbon vessels. And until we don't have any contamination that keeps getting trapped in that carbon, that system will continue to run. And yeah.
Also, Sean, we're not going to sign off on the final engineering report that it is protective of public health until we have sufficient evidence to prove that it is. We just won't sign off on it. I recognize they want a certificate of completion in a certain time frame, but they're going to have to prove that it is if we're going to sign off on it.
That's a good point, and something I should have mentioned. Yeah, so there's been many projects that they have whatever timeline they have, and we still don't approve it in whatever timeline they were going for. We don't approve it until we're comfortable that whoever's going to occupy that new building or that space is going to be safe.
And my second part of my question was, is the school working with you to help the residents know what's going on? This apparently is going to be their building, so what is their role in this, in assisting you?
Yeah, Sean, I would just start with the citizen participation plan and the requirements in that plan for the developer or the applicant to make communications and correspondence with local publications, to do the hard copy mailings. They have to create a draft site contact list with all the elected officials in the area. Our Region 2 citizen participation specialist in the Long Island City office helps review that report, making sure that all the elected official contacts are on that site contact list. And then any persons that get a fact sheet or see the initial mailings or the newspaper can ask to get a hard copy as well. And so that developer is the one that has to make those correspondence or communications. So I would say a good half of the burden of the citizen participation and communication is put back on the developer.
Okay, so do we happen to know if any of that has happened, or that's a response you don't have?
No, so we also get certifications and mailings. So as Sean said, the fact sheet for the remedial action work plan, that draft work plan that went out to public notice, So those notices were published. In addition to DEC sending out the emails in our listserv that we maintain, the developer had to make the site contact list communications and mailings as well.
Okay, thank you.
Cynthia Jeffers, if you could unmute yourself.
Thank you. So I have several questions and comments. My first question and comment is that this is a private developer. So I would like to know who's paying for all this.
I believe so. The applicant that's coming in is the 4 Ave Property LLC. So that's the owner of the site.
So that's who you guys are working for, not for the public. You're working for the owner of the site who has a vested interest in getting this done, correct?
No, we're working with them. So we're not working for them. We're working with them to make sure that they're satisfying our requirements in order to clean this up appropriately.
So who's paying for the cleanup? Who's paying for all
The
of that?
developer pays for the cleanup.
And the remediation and all the other
Yes.
stuff and the monitoring, the long-term
Yes.
monitoring. So
Yes.
what cost is that going to come up at? And is that somewhere publicly noted?
Well, if they are eligible to apply to New York State for tax credits after they've received their certificate of completion, all of that, I believe, is publicly accessible information.
Okay, and the owner, I could tell you, I have people who live directly across the street. I'm there almost every weekend. There has been zero communication with the community, Jerry, to your point. And I also have concerns giving Sunset Park's existing environmental burden. We have highways, we have industrial use, we have truck traffic, port-related activities. This added environmental impact on our community. How can we be assured that us in the community, I live here, I don't live in Albany, I don't have the luxury of not passing by that block every single day, as do many of our children and families. How can we be assured that our community is not going to face any increased health or safety risks in the future?
So I want to be clear that the DEC's oversight here is to ensure that the site gets remediated. Right now, it is a contaminated site. We don't have control over where the contamination is going. The purpose of the remediation is to clean up that contamination and get it out of the neighborhood as much as we can. That's our goal. That's always been our goal. So and to your concern about the neighborhood, part of all of these remedial action work plans that we have, and specifically in this one, we make sure that we're not, as Scarlett said, we're not trying to make the problem worse. We're trying to make the problem better. There are definitely short-term impacts. There's truck traffic. There might be some noise and odors, but the goal is that we're trying to get as much of this contamination out as possible, because that's the way we want to end up with the safest, cleanest site possible.
But there is a stench over that area that smells. I get a migraine almost immediately walking by there. And
Right.
any amount of time outside across the street there with my aunt, you get affected. I'm getting sick immediately now. So to me, that's an issue. There's families, I don't live there every day, but to Jerry's point earlier, there's families that live there every day. There's a public school directly across the street, two of them directly across the street, and no efforts have been made to outreach to them to give them any preventive things that they could do as a community. And in addition, I also want to talk about the fact sheets that everybody keeps getting to. I'm consider myself highly educated. I had to read through them at least 4 times before even barely understanding what it is that they were saying. We live in a immigrant community where over most of the residents, English is not their first language. The one-pagers that you give are not plain language. They're very jargony. They have a lot of jargon that people don't understand. I had to explain it to the one person who showed it to me. And I was like, and they still didn't understand what it is that was being said. having technical reports with this environmental jargon is not sufficient. I think that we deserve clear explanations and translated materials and real opportunities to ask questions before decisions are made that impact our own community, which we live in every single day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your concern. We're here to listen too, right? So what we're hearing is we're not doing the best job of doing outreach, and we got to do better. I can certainly hear that frustration with you guys, and we're going to try and do better with that. We do understand that there have been odors and concerns. We have been working with Haley and Aldrich. They have made several changes in the last week. James, you can maybe speak to some of those changes that you've made. But
Yep.
if there are still odors that are not being abated, there are other steps we can take.
But, and before we move on to them, I just want to say that, our contact information that's there on the fact sheet, anyone can call us at any time. We would be happy to walk someone through it if they don't understand something. I know we should do a better job with the fact sheets, hear what you're saying there. But, definitely reach out if there's any questions. And we're happy to have conversations.
And
Yeah.
and to an earlier point that was made, the families and the children that are supposed to be going to the school, they have a vested interest to get this done fast because their proposal date to have this up is by next school year. You have this, you're saying by December that all this is going to be mitigated, but there's no guarantee that this is going to happen in a safe manner that makes sense for the rest of the community. We all know that there are many things that have happened in New York City that for the moment we are reassured it's safe, and then we find out 10 years later that there's long-term effects that have occurred. And anytime that you're building over a gas station where there is known fumes and known contaminants, you have to think about 20 years later and how that's going to affect it. And that's more the concern that I have about the long-term effects that this is going to have.
That's exactly why we have requirements for long-term monitoring to make sure it continues to be effective and continues to address it. And honestly, through the periodic review reports and the monitoring reports, if we see that concentrations are going up or there's any concerns like that, we can always implement additional actions if necessary. But these are not just a clean up and sign it and we're good to go. We continue to follow these throughout our careers, throughout the life of the project until there's absolutely no need to anymore. And I'm not sure how many sites in the 25 years I've been doing this have ever we've decided not to just keep an eye on anymore because it's completely cleaned up. We watch them for like 30 plus years, even a lifetime.
And I would just like to also note for the record that the private developer and the charter school need to do a much better job of also doing outreach. A lot of the things you said were like, well, can we help you do this? Can we help you do that? And certainly as the community board, it is our job to provide information, but they're the ones that want to build this there and have this there. So I think they should bear some responsibility on doing outreach as well in the multilingual languages. That shouldn't be at our cost to do that. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to do things a little out of order. And before we continue with the community board member questions here in the room, I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Alvarez, who has his hand raised.
Superintendent Alvarez, please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Community Board 7 and members here. I just have a few questions, and mine are really related to communication. As a superintendent of this district, I've been receiving lots of emails and calls about this particular situation at this site. Unbeknownst to me as a superintendent of this district, I was not aware that anything was actually going on as a superintendent. Nothing was mailed to me, nothing was shared with me on the DOE side or anything else. So I was a little concerned that I'm expected to share information about something I'm not even aware of. Secondly, I've been getting a lot of emails and complaints from parents in the particular area as it relates to their children with asthma and smelling fumes and things like that within the community. This is a marginalized community. Sunset Park within District 15 has historically been marginalized, and we're trying to find ways to mitigate and address parents and community members at large. To Jerry's point, also the neighbors, because our students live in these apartments and houses within the vicinity. I'm interested in figuring out how can we better find ways to communicate. Again, multilingual learners. Many of our families are afraid to even have conversation in post era of the previous elections. So we're having a hard time getting the families to want to speak up publicly because of them being concerned about being made aware of in public spaces. What are some other ways that we can find to mitigate those circumstances? How can my office be communicated to what's going on so that when I'm at a community education council meeting or other meetings and I'm asked questions about something I'm not necessarily aware of or what's going on, as the charters are not responsible to respond to me as their superintendent, um, how do we address these immediate concerns going forward so that there is more active communication? I know that I've been around the site and I know that the postings are up and signs are up, but everything's all in English. And the majority of that community, as expressed before, speak multiple languages, primarily Chinese and Spanish. And it's very hard for them to be able to get answers. And I hear that you have emails and things to communicate. But if you're aware of this community, some members don't even have email addresses in this particular community. So what are some ways that my office can provide support in trying to create a town hall, if you will, or an open forum where the community, whether they're residents or school-age children that go to the school within that neighborhood, can communicate their concerns, and what access will they have to be able to do that in the language that they feel most safe and comfortable doing so, because that's also a barrier that this particular community faces. I bring this up because having the issue that we had in Gowanus, very, very publicized, very media driven, primarily because that community is outspoken and very cognizant and aware of access. In my Sunset Park area, some of my community members don't have access or aren't aware of where the access is. Even for those of us who are very educated, it's even difficult for us to find access to things publicly. So how can we find ways to mitigate this going forward so that we're all informed of how to address the gaps and work with you all to figure out how do we move forward?
Yeah, hi, this is Rodney Rivera, DEC, Region 2 office. Yeah, Superintendent, I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and that's one way you and your office will be able to get the information that you need and discuss how you would like to move forward and addressing any of these lacks in communication. Also, we would, this is it's obviously came up multiple times in this meeting. So we, as an agency, we're going to go back, look at the citizen participation plan, check the site contact list, figure out why your office wasn't on it, and why you didn't receive this information, and correct that. And community board has my email and my information. So as questions come and this conversation grows, I can absolutely be your direct contact for the agency. I work out of the Long Island City office.
Thank you
Just
for
so
that. I put my email address in the chat as well, since I'm using my phone right now as I'm in transportation. But
Yeah,
it
so
could
am
be
I.
that the Z was not added. I don't know, for whatever reason, our infamous wisdom of DIIT, they didn't add the Z to my last name as my email. So you're probably sending it to someone else who's a Bronx bilingual
Got you.
school psychologist.
All right, community board members who are here in the room. Whoa. Yeah,
Jeremy, Antoinette, then Maria Roca, then John Santor.
So my kids go to school about a block and a half away from the school. We pass by this site all the time. I actually have been avoiding trying to walk on that street because you can smell it. Um, my my concern is I hear that you're saying that certification would happen on December 31st, but you're saying that construction could still occur before certification, or construction would continue, or that people would be on the work site doing work. What why is that allowed if you haven't certified or guaranteed that it's safe? How is it also safe for the workers? How is it seems like the priority has to be to certify that everything is safe before any construction continues. So could you explain why, and if we see what types of construction are allowed before certification? Because I'm concerned that basically does it feel like the construction process is basically moving forward without really considering all these implications that you put forth, and that it occurs ongoing with your certification, which doesn't seems to be exposing more people in the neighborhood. And also, we haven't even talked about exposing the workers. What is the worker safety logistics of this? And are workers aware of the site, and what protections do they have? And so why is it moving forward for them before you're finished doing a lot of this remediation work? And I get it, like the substrate and all that stuff has to occur with the building, but the injections and all that other stuff, why isn't that done first before any construction proceeds?
All right, so let me start with the as far as on-site workers. So we do have the camp stations that are set up at the perimeter, and that's to make sure that no vapors from the site or dust are leaving the site. And if they are, then we at least get an immediate notification. We can stop work, address the problem. As far as on-site workers, they also have meters on them. And so when they're in the hole, they have a meter on them that's reading the contamination values. So if it is problematic, they can get out or what have you. But they also, and I believe the workers that are actually in the hole have higher levels of personal protection equipment that they have to wear. When they're
Sean,
directly in.
I would just interrupt and say that there is a site-specific health and safety plan that covers all of the worker requirements. It also includes community air monitoring. So there's a larger health and safety plan that is specific to this site that encapsulates all of those other measures, like Sean's mentioning some of the detailed items like personal protective equipment and air purifying respirators, and when workers have to wear those or not. So that's all contained in a site-specific health and safety plan.
Yeah, and then the second point of the remediation isn't complete, but we're still putting the building up. There's portions of the remedy that, again, if we're going to excavate soil, you obviously need to do that before you put in the building. As far as the injections and then the air units, the SSDS, the SVE, well, the SSDS, it's not remediating anything that's there, but it does require the building to be up. You can't just have an SSDS in an open lot. It does require a building. And as the injections, they're going to be taking place as construction continues and potentially long after that. So it's not that, the remediation hasn't been fully completed. Injections take time, and it takes time for these contaminants to break down. So that's just how that goes, where it's over the course of a couple months, constant monitoring, and then as far as the soil vapor extraction, that's ongoing. So even though we did most of the remedy, I guess, or we scooped up as much soil as we could, uh, it's still going to be ongoing even past that December timeline. But anybody that's in the building is not going to be exposed to this. And Scarlett was talking about that earlier, where there is no exposure route. So if you're in the building, if you're on the site, we can guarantee that you're not being exposed to anything because all of the engineering controls in place are dealing with the problem.
I just want to add, Robin, I see your comments about the SSDS, the sub-slab depressurization system. It's a protective measure on a building's cellar floor or concrete slab that is used to prevent contaminated vapor coming into that breathing space from the ground floor up. I wanted to add that, and this might have been glossed over. Superintendent Rafael Alvarez, uh, the actions and activities going on since March and on site right now were not included in a publicly posted fact sheet. It's work that was emergency in nature, and because of that, it circumvents some of our public outreach. And so I think that's where a lot of the communication gap here exists, where the department, DEC, technically, from an engineering and public health protection side, but also to curtail any kind of environmental migration of contaminants from the site, we decided that I use the word emergency, it's by definition, that we felt that it was beneficial now to remove the underground storage tanks that were attributed to the former gasoline station once they were identified during the investigation, instead of wait until a decision document and the full site remedy had been vetted and commented on and then incorporated into a decision document. So it was a technical decision that we at the DEC made to pull up any of the underground storage tanks in that shallow soil, upwards of 10 or so, 12 feet below ground surface, in case that there was still liquid in them, in case that there was still a potential for gasoline and all of those contaminants to migrate offside, whether it be to the neighbors or the school, to continue to be a source of vapor. And so this interim remedial measure, the work that's ongoing on site. So Robin's asking, how were the gasoline tanks detected? There were a number of investigations at the developer or past developers, former owners, part of land sale transactions do. Some of them include potentially taking groundwater samples, and they had identified some gasoline product under the site. And they had identified a number of underground storage tanks that would be commonly found at a gasoline filling station. And then when the applicant came into the Brownfields program with an application, they had included those previous reports and data and laboratory work with their application to us. And that's how we were made more aware of them. So again, a lot of the work now, especially with the odors and the odor generation and the dust in the last few months, has been attributed to us working with Hallie Aldrich and the developer to get those underground storage tanks from the former gas station out of the ground and to discontinue being a source of contamination. And because of the nature of the tanks and the tank pull, that's how we don't have the same public participation requirements, be that as it may. Obviously, it's not beneficial to the public. It's more beneficial to us getting the contamination from the ground and preventing migration offsite. So the chemicals are gasoline. It's what you would purchase at a gasoline filling station. And we knew that some of them were filled with concrete and closed according to our petroleum bulk storage permit process. But no, we certainly were not aware of 28 tanks underground.
And just to clarify, those 28 tanks, were those older, outdated tanks? Because this gas station has been there in existence for 100 years. So I imagine that were those smaller 28 tanks. It's probably an older relic of an older gas station.
I think that's fair to say. Some of them were 550 gallon, which would be considerably small for a filling station these days. Some were 1,000 gallon. The more current tanks, I guess you could say, were 4,500 gallon in
And would you
volume.
say the older tanks were more likely to leak too than newer
Oh
technology
gosh.
tanks?
Jane, do you want to comment on kind of spills and kind of potential?
Well, from my experience, yes, the 550s are probably much older. The newer tanks are the 4,500 gallons, and they're usually those probably post-date our regulations from, I'd say, the mid 80s or early 90s. The other ones are probably well before that.
So just a follow-up question. The school is proposing that they would open up not this September, but next September. Do you feel like that is how, if you certify it, if things go according to what you say on December 31st, does that also feel like rushing the construction in order to get it done basically within 6 or 7 months to actually open up the school by, September 2027? And does also any of that compromise the evaluations that you can make? Because at the end of the day, you're having to put in all these systems when the building's in there. Then kids are actually getting in there within, who knows, maybe a month or two or so after you put up the systems. How much time? I mean, that's also part of the monitoring of it. Is it seems like this is an incredibly rushed process. Then even if you certify and you say everything's okay by December 31st, from December 31st to September, having kids in there, but that also means you're having teachers, you're having administrators in the building probably July or even earlier, because they want to start setting up their school and everything.
I
So
think,
that's even more of a rush time on that. That gives you basically 6 months to build.
yeah, hi, this is Rodney from DEC again. I think it was mentioned earlier by a couple of folks on our side that although an applicant or a developer has a timeline, that's not what guides the process. The process guides the process. So we don't sign off until we're comfortable. DOH doesn't sign off until they are assured that the remediation is complete. So, we would hope that the process could be achieved in the applicant's timeline for their sake, but that's not our goal. Our goal, as stated earlier, is to make sure it's the process is complete, the remediation is complete.
Hi, thank you. I just had a question. Was curious if you could point us to any specific long-term health risk studies or assessments that followed kids maybe 10, 20, 30 years after their school attendance in a school that was built on a remediated gas station site or something similar to what's being proposed here.
I could certainly reach out to we have groups in the health department to put you in contact with them to identify if there's studies that have followed kids that attended schools that were built over an old gas station. I don't know if there is. It's difficult to follow to have a health study and follow kids probably for 30 plus years. I do know that there are certain challenges with a lot of the health studies that the department has undertaken, but we probably should have them speak to those. As far as the contaminants themselves that are associated with this site, the gasoline related ones, you do tend to notice more, as we talked about a little bit earlier, odor concerns, that you tend to be able to smell it even at levels that are very, very low. that aren't necessarily a long-term type health concern, but it could be something that would be certainly, and I know a lot of people get upset about this, but the word is nuisance odors. They're a nuisance. They can cause people to not, if you go to a gas station and you pump the pump and you're filling up your car, you can smell odors like that. Weathered petroleum also has odors associated with it. That's why you may see, if you're walking by the site or you look at the pictures earlier in Sean's presentation, you see that foam that's sprayed on it to help keep the odors down. But as far as long-term health studies, I certainly can put you in touch with somebody. And let me put, I think I don't know if you have it, but Chris, can you put your contact email again in the chat right here, so that anyone that has questions about that, we can put them in contact with somebody from probably our epidemiology department.
Sure thing. I just put it in the chat now.
Thank you.
Thank you. And should we be concerned currently, through the vapors of any particulate matter that folks may be exposed to currently?
So that I'll speak to that. So the like Sean said in his presentation, there's 3 different camp monitoring stations posted throughout the site that are on a 15-minute sampling interval. So it's measuring the particulate and VOC, volatile organic compound, readings every 15 minutes. And we get notified from the consultant on site every time there's an exceedance. And basically they just inform us what they did to correct that. So they are actively paying attention to any exceedances that pop up. And either if it's VOC related, they're applying more foam. Or if it's dust related, they're also either applying foam and or water suppression to correct those measures. And before they can continue working, they have to implement those in order to continue after they get an exceedance. So we are keeping an eye on that as well. So that's kind of the procedure in place right now. So to protect the surrounding public.
Okay, but
Right,
folks
and
walking through that site currently, they may be exposed to that. And there's no way for them to know.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that one more time?
So as you mentioned, the workers, they'll have access to monitoring systems that will let them know if the levels are safe. But if people are walking by there now, there's no way for them to know.
So basically there's no active work going on. So the monitors run while the consultants, the workers, are on the site actually performing the work. When there's not any work going on, those camp stations are not running because there's no activity at the site. So there's nothing being disturbed. The soil isn't being disturbed. Stockpiles aren't being moved around. Trucks aren't being loaded, and everything is more or less secured while the workers are out there actively working. So in short, there is no camp monitoring 24 hours. It's only while the workers are actively doing work at the site.
yeah, and just to add on to that, those camp monitors are set at levels to really guide if construction modifications are needed. Like if dust is observed going off the site, or those readings indicate that there could be particulates that are going off, or VOCs, volatile organic compounds, that could be going off, or the odor control plan if people are identifying odors that are going off. What it does is it's not a level that means that there's the concern off site necessarily. It more drives a lot of the housekeeping on the site, where there may be additional corrective actions that are needed. So if that VOC monitor that's downwind indicates that it's above our action level that's there, then it would prompt an evaluation of the site conditions. What happened? Did somebody start up an excavator, or is there a truck idling nearby, or is there a cloud of dust that's being generated from activities on the site, so that those things can be identified, addressed immediately, and then make sure that everything can be done in a manner that is continues to be productive or protective, not productive, productive and protective.
So I see one of the questions is who is the consultant? I'm James Bellew. I'm with Haley and Aldrich. We are the consultants. We are the ones that are doing the remedial oversight and real-time air monitoring. We have been working with Department of Health and DEC over the last few weeks in consideration of the concerns being raised. The data for any exceedances that does come to us directly. It's an automated system that is immediate. So we have a field person on site that receives that data and could employ corrective actions with the contractor, whether it's applying more foam, applying water, or stopping work outright. And that is happening in real time. Today, they had to stop some of the work because they're shaving some of the CCAM piles. And then they employed different water measures. So we are being very cognizant of it. We've also, over the last few weeks, employed more foaming. Really, it's going on the whole day. We've upped the water resources on the site. They got a new hydrant permit and they're having more hoses feeding around. So there's a lot more water application happening on the site. We've also employed our folks to walk the neighborhood. They're doing it at minimum every hour, just to see if there's any odors potentially migrating off the site. And this is also being done in conjunction with, we've asked the owner and contractor to spray a odor suppressant, which is a mist that goes around the perimeter. I think we have the wintergreen model. So you may smell things like wintergreen or Christmas trees around the neighborhood. And in addition, with how we leave the site at the end of the day, we spray the Atmos foam, which is that white foam that you saw in Sean's pictures. That gets blanketed in a very thick layer overnight, and that will stay there overnight. And then it's basically by the time we come back, the residual foam is there, but that suppresses the odors for the duration when no one's on the site.
So
ahead,
all this water that you're pumping all over the place.
Jerry,
Yeah.
I have to
Maria's
pause you
turn.
for a second, Jerry. Hold on. We're still going to committee members and board members in the room. We'll get back to you, so please hold.
Good evening. This is Maria Roca. I walk by the site intentionally as often as I can. Anytime from 7 o'clock in the morning to maybe even 1 a.m. at night. I have 3 pages of questions. Obviously, we don't have time for that. But the site to me, and I've done a lot of construction work in my professional life, sorry. And the site does not appear to be particularly secure. Where can we find the regulations that at the city, state, wherever, Department of Buildings or wherever, that outlines what is the minimum, but what is the recommended type of peripheral gating, protection, so that the site cannot be accessed by anyone other than whoever has the right to open the gate. Because what I see is the perimeter that I see, and not just from the streets, but from the adjacent properties. A bunch of kids looking for a wild moment, a wild time, in any neighborhood, anywhere in the city, could get in there. So what I understand is that the cams they're not installed really to have a clear sight of every nook and every corner, that should someone, and that they be monitored, whatever the feed is, by a company 24/7, where should the perimeter be invade, whatever the expression is in Army time, in Army lingo, compromise, that someone comes immediately and is on site, and the police department is contacted, so the 72nd precinct can send somebody out right away, and hopefully get them out of there for their own safety, and find out why they're there. So that is of huge concern to me. And that's what I'm seeing. And I have some experience. I'm not saying I'm an expert in that. Now, excuse me, I have spoken when I do those walks. I speak to whoever is out across the street. I went into the school, the middle school, up and down the blocks. And unless they are lying to me, no one has explained to them what exactly is happening on the site. Other than, there's something most people say it's something being built there.
Point of order to the chair. Maria, can you ask the question you're trying to ask?
Where is the security? Where is the the communication that
A point of order, can you let them answer the question?
I have an answer to that question about security. We have a DOB compliant fence that is secured by a lock at night. The only ones that have the access to that lock are the people that work on the site. There is 24-hour security. It's by a camera and an alarm system. So if someone does enter the site unauthorized, that a phone call goes directly to the ownership group, and then they will also route it to the police as well. So there's response immediately.
How many cameras?
I'm not sure the exact amount of cameras. I do know that the system is pretty effective. We have other sites with this group, and the cops have come within minutes.
Okay. I also want to ask about the information that your the Department of Environmental Protection and Department of Health is relying as far as when things are done, what has been accomplished. Are you guys relying on self-reporting, identification, and who of entities that are hired by the developer and the owner of the site, just self-reporting and self-certification? Or do you have people on site? And when do you have, under what circumstances are you, it's demanded that you be on site when the drilling is taking place, when whatever that is penetrating the surface, in particular, is a concern of many people? Thank you.
Well, I guess as far as authenticating, because yeah, it's not Haley and Aldrich aren't the only ones that are just, taking the samples, then saying that this was the value. And then we have third-party validators that have to go over all of this, all of the information that's submitted. The lab data is all from third-party validators. And then we also have, we review the data. We've been visiting the site periodically to make sure that, what's being reported to us in daily reports is accurate. And we've been making several unannounced visits, especially since we started hearing the complaints. So, I can't be there all the time, but we're making sure to send people down there and make sure that.
And one last question. Who pays the third-party validators?
I'm not exactly.
It's the developer is responsible for submitting all the documents to DEC, including all validated data. So that's on their dime.
Thank you for that.
Before we continue, I'm just going to limit everyone to one question. And if you have any additional questions, please send them to us, and then we'll send them over and get you a response, just because the meeting has gone on for a while. If that's all right. Okay.
Can I ask 2 questions? I understand, and I don't want to be difficult, but lots of people here ask many questions.
One and one follow-up, John.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you clarify what ongoing monitoring takes place in subsequent years just what the monitoring is and how that data is produced and how that data is accessed?
Sure. So as far as yeah, because every year the consultant needs to go to the site and they need to do inspections to make sure that all the engineering controls are still working as intended, and then they also take samples and then they submit them to DEC and DOH. I'm not quite sure if I understood the full scope of the question. Um,
Yes, Sean, I would just add that part of DEC's issuance of the certificate of completion for the construction completion would be acceptance and approval of a site management plan that would include all of that future monitoring and the monitoring and reporting requirements. So that's something yet to be developed, but right now we can understand that there's going to be groundwater monitoring, there's going to be indoor air monitoring on site. There may be potential other monitoring to be included. So that's a document yet to be drafted and approved, but it would occur prior to the COC issuance.
and all those documents will be publicly accessible. So
And posted at the repositories as well. Mhm.
And my land use question was, why is it legal to build a school on this site, considering the site was not rezoned, to my knowledge? So why does the zoning permit a school to be constructed here?
That's not a question DEC or DOH can answer. We're not involved in the local zoning or approvals.
That was 2 questions.
Much. Yeah, pass it over. Yeah.
Technically just one, I think this is just one question. As far as like the longevity of the funding for this project, if for example, the developer decides to abandon their ownership of the site, or if there were to be, considering that DEC and DOH are executive agencies, if there were to be, a change in the state budget or change in, the executive regime, how, I guess, vulnerable or guaranteed is the agency's funds for keeping the long-term monitoring going?
I was going to say, Jane, if you want to step in.
I would step in and first of all say that if the applicant did fall away and if there were no tax, whatever, for a reason, they just disappear. The state, this project, because of its status, would most likely enter the state Superfund program. I believe we just had a new 5-year reauthorization through legislature at the state level. And so we would pick up the monitoring and the remedy under the state Superfund program.
Ada?
I know you mentioned that, alerts and testing is being done on immediate real time alerts, but my main question is, how often really exactly is this really being conducted? And if it is, who is responsible for knowing this and communicating with this, especially to the community? And also, with that said, are sensitive factors being considered in this area and sensitive area? Because we have residents, we also have weather conditions like summer's coming. Low quality air is about to approach. We have children in schools. We have a lot of congestion. We also have a lot of construction on 4th Avenue. And also breaking of streets. They're also digging down. So these are concerns that we also have. And if that's the case, how is the community really moving forward going to be alerted and advised? And who would be responsible for this?
I guess what I'll say is that because we have those camp stations that we keep mentioning, Haley and Aldrich gets those immediate notifications if there's anything leaving the site. And so the obligation of the site work, and it is on DEC and DOH to make sure that Haley and Aldrich is, being very protective. And essentially, once they get these, if there's site work that's ongoing, there is constant monitoring going on. And as soon as anything starts to leave, that's when corrective measures are immediately implemented. And then they have to or communicate that to the departments. As far as telling the immediate community, I'm not sure of a situation that immediately gets communicated, but that's always something that we are free to answer questions. And if you do have concerns, you can contact myself or the DOH PM, Chris. We can speak to anything.
The thing, Sean, I want to add to that. So we get daily reports by the afternoon following a work day. So those are sent to Sean as project manager. Those daily reports do include all of the air monitoring station data, the 15-minute rolled up average data. I think what we're going to do is make sure that not on a daily basis, but somewhat frequently post those daily reports or a summation of some of those daily reports on DEC Info Locator. So I think Sean had posted that Info Locator web address, and I understand that not everyone has computer access or are computer savvy. But I think the best I can offer right now is that we can compile a number of daily reports and intermittently upload those to DEC Info Locator. So again, it's not going to be real time, but I think that's the best I can offer right now.
Hi, my name is.
Point of order. Can we just make sure that the chairs are calling on board members to speak as part of that process and ensure that they're committee members?
Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Sylvia, and I'm a resident in the community. And my one question is, when they were taking out each of the 28 tanks, is there documentation of the conditions of every single one of them? You mentioned something about 550 and 4,500. Is there detailed information on the conditions of each of those tanks? Thank you.
Yeah, so in those daily reports that David was talking about, Haley and Aldrich, they have to submit observations as far as, so every tank that they pulled out, they provided their observations of the tank's condition, if it was shown to be leaking, etc. And they also had a monitoring device that they would use in proximity to the tank to verify if it is off-gassing any vapors and what those values were. So there are detailed observations for each of the tanks that were removed.
And I think we have someone online waiting to ask a question.
Joanna Borkin, sorry if I mispronounced your name. If you are still online, can you please unmute yourself?
I can unmute myself. I came on here concerned, and I'm now vastly, exponentially more concerned. I guess my real question is, so how do we know we're safe? How do we know we're safe? It sounds like we have to trust a consultant hired by a developer who has a profit motive and whose profit is eventually going to be paid by us because we pay for charter school leases that we don't want, which this board voted against, said we want this school. So given that the developer has communicated zero with anybody in the neighboring area, that there was this emergency situation where 28 tanks, like okay, so I have to ask a question. So how was it that these 28 tanks that are so close to the ground that they are 2 feet will take care of most of them? Like how is it that these were not known about in the initial spec of what it was going to take, and whose failure was that?
Sean, if I can answer that first, because with some of the questions about Haley and Aldrich, So yes, we are paid for by the developer, but we are also a private company that has professional licenses that we have to maintain with the New York State Department of Education and with our own professional engineers and geologists. And we have our own code of ethics that we have to adhere to. If we do not, no different than a lawyer who gets disbarred, we will lose our professional licensure. We work on more than just this one site, and we are independent monitors because at the end of the day, we have to have a working relationship with the agencies so that there's a trust with the work that we do. So we've been on a lot of sites. This is not our only site. So insofar as telling the contractor to stop, no, and everything else, we have that authority and we have done it. So you do have those assurances. As far as the tanks, I worked on a lot of gas stations in my years, and I had the contract with Hess and BP for retail petroleum, doing 150 stations all around New York City and Long Island. This is very typical of a gas station. Back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, where this was really operating as an unregulated gas station at the time, there was no one watching what they were doing. The procedure and process at the time was either put new tanks on the other side of the site and forget about these, backfill them with something, usually a sandcrete or something else, or at the end of the day, sometimes they would just kind of just put some caps over it and just build on top of it. And some sites are built up where they're 7, 8 feet higher than they used to be back in the day. So it's not necessarily a failure. It's just how things were done in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. You can't account for records where people say that they were closed and removed when they just left them there. It's very, very hard to determine. This site is not that big. It's 10,000 square feet. 28 tanks is a lot, but we had another site up in Inwood where there was only supposed to be 6 tanks, and we ended up with 45. So it is very regular for these old retail petroleum sites.
One thing I want to add is that, because you mentioned how did we not know when it's only, however many feet under the ground, which, 10 feet to 12 feet below the ground is a decent distance, but it's just that our technology isn't that good. So, it'd be a lot simpler if we could just scan the ground and we could get a 3-dimensional, viewing of what's actually down there. But the technology at the moment, all we can really tell are, and I haven't used the GPR devices personally, but you essentially just get hits of like metals or dense materials. It's not oh, you have a tank of this size in this location because I just scanned the ground. It's unfortunately not at that level. So there's a lot of uncertainties when it comes to finding things in the subsurface.
I do see a question in here, Sean, with the tanks. So we knew of 4 tanks, and we knew that of those 4 tanks, this site was leaking. There was a spill case on the site prior to our ownership group acquiring it. And there was already being addressed through the spills program and OER. So this site entered into the program knowing of 4 leaking tanks. The other tanks were encountered through the IRM. So during the excavation to remove those 4 tanks, the additional tanks were uncovered.
Yeah, I want to stress that it wasn't an emergency situation in the sense of, oh no, we really need to get down there because it can impact the neighboring, community. It was, we know that there could be we know that there are tanks. They could still be leaking. So now in our efforts to remediate the site, now it's further difficult. It's much more complicated. It's still migrating off site. So it was an emergency situation in the sense of, we know that there's tanks there. Let's get them out. And then we can truly refine our remedial action for the site. And in the process of doing that, we got down there. Oh, here's the 4 tanks. Oh, there's more. Oh, there's more. So it was we just kept finding more and more as the excavation continued.
Right. Sometimes it makes sense in the middle of the investigation to do these actions, just because if you have identified there's tanks down there, you don't want to necessarily wait and have them continue to leak if they could potentially be leaking. So, it's something the Department of Health supported, removing them before the final full remedy for the site. And, now they're gone. Now they're out of there. So that's a good thing for the
Yeah,
community.
but meanwhile, there's a school across the street that had no
All right,
idea.
I think
No
the
idea.
question has been answered to the best of their ability. Do we have any other public members of the public who have questions at this time? Online, I see a few hands as well. Let's do online and then in the room.
Robin Kilmer, can you please unmute yourself?
Hi. So okay. So yeah, I do have lots of questions. But I know I'm allotted one. So my question right now is, you did mention that there was a citizen participation.
Oh, Robin, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So it was mentioned that there's supposed to be a citizen participation plan, and that is supposed to be done by Brooklyn Rise and or the developer. And no one here has seen any kind of participation plan. Is there a deadline for them to do that? And are there any repercussions if they don't meet that deadline or don't do any participation or informing of the public?
So I will say that the citizen participation plan is located as an appendix in the remedial action work plan. And then it outlines what the consultant's procedures are for and the department for alerting the public of things, and it kind of outlines that BCP process that I went through as far as releasing fact sheets at certain milestones and things. So that we do have a citizen participation plan for this site. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, so but no one knows anything about it. Clear right now. There's left schools in the area.
Hold on, Robin. Yeah. Just pause 1 second, please. Yeah. As far as from the public, it's just Robin. Okay. Hi, Robin. We're just doing one question at this time.
Okay.
All right, public members here in the room. Go. Who's the mic? Oh, great.
Hi, I'll be very brief. Brian Dent's Sunset Post. From what I understand from old maps, this site also was a old stream, ancient stream that was landfilled, and there's some concern that rainwater will will contaminate and migrate through this and go farther down to. Sorry. Hello. Hi. Brian Sunset Post. This site is a former stream, looking at old maps, and there was a concern that rainwater will go down to where the stream is or was after it was filled, and could contribute to more contamination. Can you speak about that at all?
I guess what I'll say is that if the rainwater is, dropping down to the groundwater table and maybe carrying the contamination from the site down to the groundwater table, that should all be addressed with the remedial actions that are that we plan to implement at the site. So the injections will deal with anything, in the site area, that 10,000 square feet that James mentioned. The injections will deal with the entire site area. So any rainwater or anything else that's added to it will be within a treated area. I hope that answers kind of.
Thank you.
Can we give the mic in the back? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Spalding. I'm the principal of the middle school across the street from the site. And I'm here because the vapor smell was so bad 2 weeks ago that we called in the teachers union environmental hygienist to come and do readings in our building. She's going to be sending a report to us about that specific piece, but it was bad enough that we had to close windows, we had to move classrooms. And it seems like that vapor is no longer being smelled. And I think it might be because it seems like construction has stopped for the time being. I really appreciate the person who gave a lot of great detail about what they're doing to remediate that vapor. So thank you for that. That brings me a lot of comfort. I also just wanted to say that when the environmental hygienist came in, I had approached this conversation in the way that I think some of us are approaching this conversation, which is like, this has to stop. This is crazy. I can't believe that it's, this gas station that's being converted into a school. And she, without an agenda, again, she works for the teachers union. An explanation she gave me that really helped me was that if you have the choice to leave this site as is, with all of these contaminants, with all of these environmental factors, or you have the choice to have some controlled cleanup and a strong plan to do that cleanup. Like the preferred method is to have the remediation plan and have people monitoring and trying to clean up the site, because the site is dirty now, regardless of whether we work on it or not. So while I have issues with the charter school being built, as I know this committee and the Brooklyn Community Board has expressed, and that's for another meeting, I think the remediation process itself is very important. And to other points that people have made, I don't want to get into it too deeply, but I think better communication is really clutch in helping make sure that the neighborhood can get behind this work. And I really want to make sure that while there is a lot of focus on ensuring the building and the foundation is good for the students who will be there in the future, I am very concerned about the time that happens between now and the building being complete for the neighbors and the community and the school across the street that is dealing with the noise, the vapors, the trucks, the pollution every single day while we wait for this building to be done. So I don't know what and what kind of effort needs to be made to mitigate those factors, but if anyone wants to talk more about that or work with me on it, I'd be happy to do that.
This is Rodney from DEC. First off, I want to thank you for that statement, because that's exactly how we feel in our goal, right? We do hundreds of these throughout the city, and our preference is not to leave dirty sites throughout this beautiful city, to clean them up so that they could be utilized. The community board has all of our information. We're hoping that this is the beginning of a more fruitful, ongoing communication relationship regarding this project. So you can get my email address. It's in the chat, actually, but you could also get it from the community board. And we'll look to stay engaged and continue with this communication as needed.
Yep. And just to add to what Rodney said, we're all in communication with each other. We work hand in hand. So if you contact any of us with any other concerns that come up, if there's odor concerns or something that you're seeing, just reach out to us, any of us, and we'll all talk together as well and communicate and, have that conversation with you.
All right. So I guess in the interest of wrapping this up, one thing I would say is I think there's a consensus here tonight that communication with the neighboring community has been really inadequate. And so I put it to you as a task to make more of an effort. Like literally go out and knock on people's doors and introduce yourselves and give them your contact information. That's what needs to happen here. And in terms of this larger project, I personally have a lot of concerns about this site being a school. I appreciate the need for remediation and timely remediation, but with all of the vapors, with the density of schools in the area already, I don't think it should be a school. And so I would like to introduce a motion for the community board to write a letter to the Board of Education and to Brooklyn Rise that this site not be used for a school or for a residence, but for some other type of a project that's more appropriate. Do I have a second? Seconded.
Can I speak before we vote?
Yes, discussion is allowed. Yes, go ahead, Jerry.
It's not discussion. Is because you guys told me to hold on until everyone get their turns, so I've been waiting. So what I want to know is, why the state, the Environmental Protection and Department of Health is involved? How come the New York City, I'm sure they're the one that issuing the license, the one that approved to selling the land and collecting the tax? How come they're not here? Can you explain that, Chair?
We
person?
invited them and they said that they were not involved with this project and it was the sole purview of the state. Yeah, yeah.
But did we kind of ask them why? Why? Because like the example I gave, this is New York City's land. This was a New York City gas station. Why? How come they're not involved? Did we just
Jerry,
accept? Go ahead.
I can respond to your question. So I was tasked by the committee chairs to reach out to the New York City Office of Environmental Remediation regarding this project. This was their response. The property at 4001-11 4th Avenue is enrolled in the New York State Brownfield Cleanup Program. The cleanup of this property is being overseen by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The site is also subject to environmental requirements for hazardous materials and air quality as a result of E designations placed during the Sunset Park rezoning. That means the OER must sign off, and that's the Office of Environmental Remediation, New York City agency, must sign off on the hazmat and air quality work before the project can get building permits to start construction and to allow occupancy at building completion. The remedial work being done under DEC oversight will satisfy the hazardous materials requirements. As for the air quality requirements, OER will review the development team's plans and sign off once the work is done according to an approved work plan.
Is there any
So-
discussion?
So you mentioned New York City, right? You say New York City, right?
Jerry, they're not
Wait,
here
hold on,
and they're
hold on.
not involved in this. And
No, no, I'm
getting
saying
late.
before
9 o'clock.
I know it's getting late. Okay, I wasted my whole night, right? Not wasted, but I dedicated my whole night for this. So give me some time to speak. Okay. So if we are writing a letter, which I wasn't talking about that.
Point of order to
the
the
way
chair. Does Jerry have any debate on the motion on the floor?
I say we're not having a debate because I'm still asking my question.
There is
right?
a
Because
motion
you guys,
on the floor. Point of order to the
Jerry,
chair. There's a
I'm gonna
motion on the
pause
floor.
you. Jerry, I'm gonna
Right.
pause you. Sorry, so Jerry, I'm gonna pause you for a quick second. There's a motion on the floor that has been duly seconded. The chair, Diana, allowed you to ask a question, which they answered. But in terms of parliamentary procedure, right now, the questions are limited to the question on the floor, which is the motions Diana entertained. So I know you have some additional questions, but right now we have a motion on the floor that needs to be solved, and then we can entertain other questions, or you can reach out to state DEP.
So let me
directly.
interact too, right? So again, I raised a concern before I left my house that I have a questions. Before my question was asked, Diana.
All right. Moving on
Wait,
to.
you guys pause me? That's kind of messed up. You guys mute me, okay?
Barry, I'm sorry, but you did ask a couple of questions earlier. I would invite you to please just send us your questions and we'll send them to DEC and DOH and we'll be sure to get you a response. Thank you.
Can we please get the motion repeated?
The motion is to ask the Board of Education and Brooklyn Rise to not build a charter school or any school on this location because this location is not appropriate for a school or a residence to be built.
May I make a comment?
Of course.
My understanding is that the charter school has a lease that's expiring. What do you think this letter is going to do?
Hopefully it will protect children.
No. I understand what you're saying, but we know that the school presented and there was no changing their mind because their lease was going to be expiring and they needed to relocate, and this is what they chose. I don't agree with it, But it doesn't, I mean, from what I understand from their presentation, unless we're going to invite them again, their plan is to do this there because they have invested the money, or whoever invested the money, and they want a school. So that's the only reason why I'm asking.
I think it's always good to have our opposition noted somewhere on the record, right? In case something happens 20, 50 years from now, at least there'll be record that we brought up these issues a long time before anything happened and nothing was done. So I think it's just good to just put it in writing, right?
I agree, but again, if that's the case, in my opinion, we got to invite them back to the room and explain themselves. Are they aware of all this stuff? That's just my opinion. I don't know if anybody else agrees.
I'm sorry. I also would like to clarify it, Cynthia. You keep saying Board of Education. The Board of Education does not have oversight over charter schools. It's the Board of Regents, New York State. So I would just like, if you are going to make an amendment to make it clear, the DOE doesn't have jurisdiction over this.
Is that a friendly amendment that you're suggesting, Cynthia?
Could be friendly, I guess, if we wanted.
Yeah, I accept it as a friendly amendment to send this letter to the Board of Regents instead of the Board of
Yes, to the
Education.
State Board of Regents that controls charters and approves their locations.
Yes. All right, we have some other folks who want to make comment. Can we get the mic? Go ahead, Jeremy.
I would just like to quickly say to Pat, I think the big thing is that the charter school is rushing this to get into, and we can't guarantee any safety. And if this process is rushed, this is a huge concern. And I think it's easier for the charter school to start looking now for other locations. And they had looked at other locations, even explored ones outside of District 15 in District 20, which has very few charter schools and maybe isn't so opposed to a charter school. Maybe not. I'm not going to speak for them, but I think it's much more likely now to keep forcing the opposition and to tell them that given this mounted evidence of the site being so toxic and contaminated, that it is in the best interest of the community that they look at an alternative site. And I think also too, I think it would be important for us in this letter to, mention that we appreciate the remediation of the site and that there shouldn't be any construction moving forward until the remediation is finished. And then at that point, that there is a consideration of what is the safest to do with this space now that we know it is in this contaminated space, and what to move forward with. Because I want to mention that they brought up, or I think our District 15 superintendent brought up Gowanus. That was a contaminated site where children were in, that was a charter school, that children were getting sick from that. So that's the worst case scenario that we want to see. So we don't want to rush this at all.
Any further comments should be under 2 minutes, please.
I just wanted to, I guess, add a friendly amendment in the resolution, if you can specify that the site is a Superfund site.
It is not a Superfund site. I want to be clear. It is not a state Superfund site. It is it's in the brownfield cleanup program.
You had mentioned that the site would qualify as a Superfund site.
Only the question was if the developer walked away from their site management obligations, what recourse would DEC have? DEC would have recourse under either the Superfund program or the spill program because this is a petroleum site. So we have funding through two different pots of money. More likely, this would go through the petroleum remediation program. But right now, for now, it is a brownfield cleanup program site.
Hi, John Santor, a public member of the committee. So I share the chair's spirit of the resolution. I would like to support it. My concern is, does this resolution suggest, therefore, that the board is against any remediation and redevelopment on brownfield sites in general, so that in the future, if someone wanted to remediate a site and build an apartment building, for example, and they went through this process and they said, we're going to remediate the site and build an apartment building, it sounds like this resolution would then be against that as well. And I don't want to vote for a resolution that would be sort of a blanket condemnation of that kind of procedure. Is there some way of tailoring this so that it's, I mean, it sounds like part of the spirit is that this is a particularly noxious sounding site for a school with children. But again, I'm a little conflicted there. I'm uncomfortable too, but can you speak to that?
I guess, so my thinking with this proposal, and this is stuff we can include in our letter, is based on the number of members of the community and members of the community board who found issue with this particular site, with the odor, with the vapors coming off of it, before excavation has really even begun in full, that this particular site is a poor choice for a school or residents. I'm all for brownfield cleanup. Love it. I'm all for like making use of our limited land resources to create institutions that benefit our communities. And so I would like to include language in the letter that states that this is a site that already we've seen a lot of problems with. I mean, when Cynthia's saying she gets a headache just from walking by, that to me is a huge red flag. So, you know, I think, and I'm also concerned about the level of the vapors given the height of the water table since it used to be a creek. So for me personally, no, this is not a condemnation of building schools on brownfields at all. It's this particular location.
So could you include language to that effect, that it would be this is opposition to this particular site for this particular use?
Yep.
Because before you did say school or residence, but you're saying it's for this site specifically.
Yes.
Okay, hi. I'm not sure who from the governmental side of this meeting mentions something about the stream that happens to go direct that side. That is all of Sunset Park. There is a stream there. There's a stream on there every east-west street, just about, because of the nature of 20,000 years ago and the last ice age and so forth. Can the letter maybe touch on that? And because, and that this concerns to me now that I think of it, as referring to the middle school as well, we are downhill. This part of Sunset Park is clearly at quite a sharp angle. That the remediation plan seems to be very specifically hovered over this site as if it were an island. It is not. It is adjacent. It is across from, uphill from, and I haven't had time to think about the language, but the lack of knowledge of so many entities throughout my experience about what the neighborhood, this part of, not just the neighborhood, this part of Southwest Brooklyn, how you cannot treat it like any other part, like a remediation, a cleanup, anywhere where it's flat, or if you're downhill, or if you're uphill. This is very particular, and I haven't seen anyone come on board with that. Maybe they do have that expertise, I don't know. And so that expertise is needed anytime anyone thinks of digging down Sunset Park.
All right. Is there any questions online? No, or comment? Okay.
No hands raised online.
All right, I'd like to do a roll call vote.
Just a point of information. This motion would be coming out of the Land Use Committee because they have quorum and not Parks and Environment, correct?
Correct, but everyone who's a member of the community board who is present at this meeting is entitled to a vote.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm gonna be calling, I guess, roll call vote for the Land Use Committee members. Voting on the motion. Diana Gonzalez.
Yes.
Erin Keith. Joan Body. Xiomara Garcia. Matthew Florkowitz. Matthew Florkowitz. Okay. Julio, I have a question. Do public members count? towards-
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
they vote.
Okay, Julia Melzer Harris. Nicholas Jackson. Daniel Kaminsky. I know he was appearing online. Daniel Kaminsky, you can mute yourself if you're still here. Okay, just bear with me, everyone. I don't see Daniel online. Okay. Jeremy Kaplan. Thank you. Antoinette Martinez. Thank you. Damaris Santiago. John Santor. Thank you. Maria Roca. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Land use, yes. Okay, so am I going by Parks Committee or just the board members that are here? Okay. Yeah.
Can you guys speak into the mic? We can't hear you online.
I'm sorry, I'm just clarifying that every member of the community board who's present at this meeting is entitled to a vote.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna go to Parks.
Yes, if you're a public member, you can also vote. No. Yeah, so parts and.
Yeah, my understanding is, and Julio, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're a public member of who's not a public member of one of these two committees and you don't have a vote, you'd have to be a public member of either Parks and Environment or of Land Use Landmarks.
No, only public members of the Land Use Committee can vote. Board members
okay, 'cause-
present can vote, yes.
Got it.
Oh, so, okay, so what am I doing now? Am I calling just the board members who are here? Okay. So I have Diana Aguilar. Esteban Chavez.
No.
I have Marius Williams. Okay. Did I miss any board members? I don't believe so. I got Maria Roca before. Oh, Sylvia Agosto, sorry. You're voting yes, no, or abstain on the motion? Yes. Okay, so for Parks, I don't know, Parks and the board members, so that's 1, 2, 2 yes.
You have board members online.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Cynthia. I've never done this before, so I apologize. Cynthia Jeffers.
Abstain due to conflict.
Okay, thank you very much. I will note that. Pat Ruiz.
No.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
No.
No to the motion. Okay, thank you. Julio Pena, the third.
Abstain.
Thank you. Jerry Chan.
No.
Okay, hold on, just to make sure I want to get all the board members who are online. That was Cynthia Jeffers, Pat Ruiz, Julio Pena the third, and Jerry Chan, and I believe I got all the board members online.
You got everybody, Natasha.
Okay. So. Okay, so just give me a few seconds. Yes, they did. Okay, so I have it as 9 in favor, which means yes, 3 noes, 1 abstention, and 1 abstention with conflict.
I had 3 abstentions. Julio, and yeah, and Cynthia.
I counted Marius Williams as the abstention. So Julio is another abstention, so it's 2. So
Oh, and then there's
Cynthia Jeffers, I said abstention with conflict. So
Correct.
again, the motion, I believe, passes. Julio can confirm. 9 yes, 3 no, 2 abstentions, and 1 abstention with conflict. Julio, does that mean the motion passes?
Yes, the motion passes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, everyone. I'd now like to move the committee, the land use committee, into open business or new business. I don't know if you guys want to hang out or, yeah. Yeah, you can adjourn.
Guys. Okay. I'm adjourning for the Parks and Environment Committee. Thank you guys for coming out. Good night.
All right, and for land use, we now move to new business. John?
Hey, folks, this is Rodney from DEC. Are we good to head out? You don't want to
Yes,
be all
thank
up
you
in your
so much for
business.
joining us today.
Sure.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank
I
you.
hope that
Thank you
was
very much.
exciting for you.
Educational.
We truly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Good night, all.
Good night.
Chair Aguilar, I know Danny, you adjourned. I know. I just wanted to say I was going to ask just a suggestion or a question. If the Parks Committee had been provided any information on the Steiner sequel project, which was supposed to fund
really gotta
issues, parks. You haven't been provided information on that. Okay, thank you. So my land use questions are as follows. I wanted to ask about St. Rocco's. So there are 5 meetings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings that were listed by the developers who spoke to this board on April 13th. To my knowledge, 2 of those meetings involved the developers, meaning the Fifth Avenue Committee and Watermark Capital, that were public meetings. Those were June 4th, 2025 before this board, and the April 13th, 2026 meeting that involved Watermark Capital and Fifth Avenue Committee. All the other meetings listed, March 24th, May 7th, December 16th, January 20th, February 2nd, were either private meetings or the developers were not present at those meetings. So I just would like to clarify also, so the February 2nd, 2026 meeting, for example, we were told that I believe Chair Pena and the chairs of the Land Use Committee participated in a private meeting with the developers, Fifth Avenue Committee and Watermark Capital, I believe. Have other private conversations involving any members of the board taken place with the developers concerning this project? And can you speak to the nature when those conversations took place and what was discussed during those conversations?
I'm wondering that too. I would say that Aaron and I have not had any meetings with just Watermark and no one else.
Have you had meetings with the Fifth Avenue Committee?
No, not exclusively.
So there have been so aside from these meetings that were listed publicly in April, there have been no other conversations that have gone on.
It was a meeting at the council member's office.
It was at the February 2nd.
I don't remember.
February 2nd, 2026. That one that Julio.
I don't see this as
Yeah. Right.
Hold on, I need you to pass the mic so that way people who are
Hi,
attending online
I'm
can
sorry.
hear.
Please
Please start from the beginning, Erin.
I honestly, I don't think this is new business. I think this is an interrogation.
I just want to clarify very quickly, make it very clear, everything's on the table. Diana and I met with the councilwoman, FAC, and the developer at that February meeting. We have never met with any of these entities separately. It's always been together. It's always been FAC together with the developer. Otherwise, we have not spoken with them since February. All of the other meetings.
Not true for me.
were-
I ran into Asher Freeman at a party.
Okay. It was not a formal meeting. There was no formal presentation. It was a party. I have not been notified. We have not been requested to have another meeting since then. Everything else will be public. It has been public. It will continue to be public.
Also,
That should answer pretty much everything.
Aaron and I also had a meeting with the 27th Street Block Association. And that's the only other meeting.
And was that after the February 2nd meeting?
Give me 1 second, Diana. I have Pat Ruiz with her hand raised. She has a question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm trying to understand, why is there new business in the land use committee meeting when 783 Fourth wasn't even on the agenda?
I was informed that new business needs to be an option on the agenda.
No, it only needs to be, it needs to be agended in order to be discussed. We're giving the courtesy to discuss it, but
All right.
anything pertaining to 783, that is considered old business. New business
That's
are
true.
new items that are not being discussed or have been discussed previously.
Right.
And may I also add, in the essence of time, our staff needs to go home.
I need to be back here in less than 12 hours. So if we can wrap this up, please.
Sure.
John, I would say send me an email and I'd like to adjourn the meeting now.
So my concern, and I'm speaking as a public member of the committee, and I understand that I'm tired too. My alarm is going to go off at 5:30 in the morning. I'm tired too. Respectfully to the chairs, who I believe are sincere, thoughtful people. I'm not trying to question anyone's intentions here. I have sent the chairs numerous emails over the last year concerning meetings on this project, suggesting discussion topics, suggesting meetings on this topic. The vast majority of those emails have never been acknowledged or responded to. Also, there have only been the 2 public meetings on this. So I was trying to find out if there had been any other private conversations, which are highly relevant, because when the developer presents this board, they say they met with Community Board 7, even if it was only a few members of Community Board 7 and not with a committee and not in a public capacity. So I was trying to confirm if there had been any other private meetings. So the answer is no. And I think that this, Aaron, to be honest with you, you know a lot more about architecture and design and all this. I'm not questioning any of this. But the energy and the tone of your response is suggesting, and Diana, you said this is an interrogation. I think this is highly pertinent information for committee members, for the board, and for the public to know.
I think it's appropriate to bring it
So-
up when we have the meeting on this agenda item.
So
Natasha needs to go
Right,
home.
so
And I am,
can
I am here.
can I clarify one?
Meeting.
Can I
Natasha,
clarify
You
one?
can cut the mics.
Can I clarify one more thing pertaining to St. Rocco's? I cannot clarify anything else. The meeting has been adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
I do
See
not
you
think this is constructive for Ward 7 or the neighborhood, and I don't think it's fair or even helpful for anyone, Eric.
We're not on a mic, so let me respond to that. As personally, I have a job that requires